butchered it already. What I was gonna say was the show that promises you the shortest load screens.
That's
The
it.
Boyz podcast.
Hey, we can't fault you. You just came from work, so it's been a
Yeah,
long day.
I literally rushed home so fast to get here to make it for this. I actually had more work to do there, and I just told my supervisor, I'm like, I gotta go. I got a podcast to make.
I can't believe it's already episode 5. Like we only started. It feels like we only started like 2 weeks ago, but we've been pumping out episodes like left and right.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, we keep pumping out some even more content. Maybe get
Yeah,
some more
just
viewership going, and
yeah, even more content
yeah,
every week.
absolutely.
Every Sunday we'll go live around 9 to 10ish. We'll be
Yeah,
live. So
this is definitely a little late for us, but yeah,
little,
we're here every Sunday night.
that's it.
But
Always.
anyways, so this week we decided we were going to cover the topic of Super Nintendo for the, what did we say it was, fourth episode or fifth?
Fifth. Yes,
Fifth
our fifth
episode. The fifth
episode.
episode. That is wild. Holy shit!
Yeah.
I'm already losing track. It's not a good sign.
No, it's going quick.
Yeah. So yeah, Super Nintendo. I mean, for us, I think everybody knows that watched last week's episode that we both just turned 30. I
Mhm.
think for us growing up, we have a lot more memories of all the systems that follow Super Nintendo. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Like,
you're correct on that because our brothers would have had the
yeah,
NES and then to the Super Nintendo. So they
yeah,
have more memories of us. I think most of our memories will be kind of, murky in that early 90s era.
right,
But
right.
yeah, we're more, I would say, late 90s, early 2000 gamers.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, the first console I touched was N64. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, Super Nintendo obviously is the predecessor to it. So yeah. What was the first time? Do you remember the first time you played a Super Nintendo? Or
Yeah, well, early on in the, I would say probably 96, 97ish, before, my brother Nick got his N64, he was still playing the Super Nintendo. But I wasn't really playing it. I was kind of just watching him, you know, play it and
right.
watching him.
So this
Yeah,
is
I was,
late in his lifetime too, right? Like it's a
yeah.
64.
Yeah, he had gotten a 64, I think, a couple months before it after it came out. And then really I don't know even know what happened to that Super Nintendo after that.
Oh, is that right? Eh? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
for me. I never had a Super Nintendo in my house growing up. Like I said, the first console I ever played was a N64, but
Yeah.
there was a Sega Genesis in my house when I was growing up. That my brother had.
Yeah.
I guess we weren't really hard. We were at no point like married to Nintendo. I never bought. The only Nintendo system I actually have ever owned, I think, is N64. So I've never really been like a like married to the brand of Nintendo. However, I do feel like I kind of missed out. Like I wish I was a little bit older because it does seem like that early '90s period is really like a peak time for Nintendo. Like they just had their hands all over everything. Like you buy Nintendo cereal, watch
Yeah.
Nintendo TV shows, Super Mario Brother movies. It's funny because there's one out now, but
Yeah. But yeah, that is like, I would say that's the peaked era of gaming because those kids, like we talked about in the previous episodes, they went from that 8-bit to 16-bit into that 3D era. And then we came in when it was more that online was the next big thing, right? So, you know,
yeah,
we kind of missed that era of that jump from, watching, little pixels jumping around to, it's kind of getting a little better into 3D and then to what we have now. So it's been a big jump. I wish I was, like you said, an 80s kid because leading up to that would have been such a great transition to go through those time frames until we're here now, right? But I know when I first moved up to Innisfil again, so in the summer of '99, that's when I first started really playing the Super Nintendo. So when I first moved up here, I already told the story about my friend Rick, who used to live across the street, and he gave me my first Game Boy.
yeah,
But when we used to go over to his house, he had an N64 and he had Super Nintendo. So we used to always just sit in his living room and game out on that. And the first game I ever really started playing was a game called Demon Crest. I don't know if you're familiar with that game. Have you heard of that game
No,
before?
I don't think I am. What is it, Demon? Do you say Quest or Crest?
Crest. Crest.
Crest. No, I don't
Yeah.
know. That's a
So
fighter?
no, no, it's a side scroller. It could be classified as an RPG, but it's not. It's
Oh,
very intuitive. Like it's when you first start the game, right away you're in a boss fight. Like
right.
you're in a boss fight. You're a little tiny demon, a demon dragon, and you're fighting a giant dragon right off the bat. And it's very cool, actually. The graphics are very good for that time. Um, the landscape, you can interact with a lot of statues in the background and smash them to get, coins and stuff. You can go to shops and buy new upgrades and suit of armor and stuff like that. You could fly in it. The music was, very spooky. It's a very, very, very good game.
Mm. That's what the Super Nintendo like it. How do you feel like it aged? Like how if you went back to play that game now, like do you think you would still be
No,
impressed by it? Or?
yeah, it's still really good. Like actually, I would say a few months ago, I didn't play the game because I don't own it, but I watched like a walkthrough of it, and yeah, like I said, the depth of the game actually still looks really good. Like the bosses and stuff like that. Obviously, it's that 32-bit, 16-bit graphics, but it
Yeah.
looks really well. But when I really first got into the Super Nintendo, I had a friend also on the street. His name was Taylor, and he was always behind in the systems. Like when the Xbox came out, he was just getting a PlayStation. Like he was
Right,
so
right,
he was so far behind in the systems. He was more of a Game Boy player. But I remember one
right.
day his mom came home and she had picked up a Super Nintendo from a yard sale. So he had gotten the Super Nintendo. It came with Yoshi's Island, Paperboy
Ooh.
2, and X-Men Mutant Apocalypse. So the only
Oh, you
so
know
the
I love
only
music.
that game's good, yeah. The only right thing to do, the fitting thing to do was to have a sleepover. So that night we had a sleepover, and the first game we popped in was X-Men Mutant Apocalypse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so basically in that game, I know you'll probably remember that one. Aside from the amazing soundtrack that no one likes to talk about, probably top 15 of the Super NES soundtracks that game has. But basically, you could
High
play
praise.
as
That's high praise.
yeah, and you could play as some of your favorite characters, right? You had Cyclops, you had Wolverine, Psylocke, Beast, and Gambit, and yeah, they all had individual levels, and you would go, and I think if not all, you would fight a Sentinel at the end, and then
Right.
throughout the game, when you're getting further in, I think Professor X had found out Magneto was gonna destroy Genosha. So to prepare
Yes.
you, yeah, so to prepare you, you'd have to fight a hologram of the Juggernaut and Omega Red,
Oh,
and
Mega Red.
then you would go on to fight Magneto. So that was actually the first game like I ever really jumped into and played. And then the next night, we had so much fun doing it. I stayed over there until about noon, 1 or 2. I went home for a little bit, and then right again, he was like, "Hey, you want to sleep over again and play some more Super Nintendo?" So again, we went over and played Super Nintendo, and this time we plugged in Paperboy 2. And that's a game also that doesn't get a lot of praise. Did you play a lot of Paperboy 2? Because
I've played
this
zero Paperboy at all.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I know.
That's a
Is that
that's
blasphemy?
yeah, that no, no, but that's a game though that has so many little Easter eggs in it. Like you can do so many little cool things in that game. Like it's it's funny that like you could be delivering papers and there's a haunted house with ghosts, and right next to that house there's kids playing basketball in the driveway. Like you can throw your paper at, old people sitting on their swings on their porches, and they'll flip over. There can be people working on their cars You throw a paper at it, the car drops on them. You know, the hood
Uh,
drops on them. You can stop criminals by throwing paper at them, and the cops catch them. There's dogs running around.
it's
there's
gotta
some
have a little
crazy
bit of
stuff in that
physical
game.
comedy.
Yeah, I'm
I
surprised. I'm surprised you never jumped in the Paperboy too.
think I definitely like watch gameplay and stuff, but no, I've never owned any of them. And like, am I correct, or are they not like really expensive games to get your hands on now? Or am
I'm
I
not
wrong?
I'm not too sure how much they are. I know I would say they're probably around that $30 range.
Oh,
Maybe
okay, I'm
30,
definitely mixing
maybe
it up with
30 and
something else
higher.
then.
But
Okay, I'm
again,
definitely mixing it up with something else then.
for any of the viewers out there, like we're in Ontario, Canada, right? I'm assuming in the States it might be a lot cheaper. I'm not too sure about
Possibly,
European
yeah.
countries, but like for us here, that stuff is pretty pricey.
Yeah, even here you notice like I wouldn't say that we live rurally, but we definitely don't live in a large city. But like I
Yeah.
noticed like closer you get to the city, you get a little bit cheaper prices. But yeah, it's yeah, you get bent over for vintage games where we are. Like it's brutal. Like since COVID too, especially like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like I remember going around with you and other friends back like 10, 15 years ago and stuff. We go looking for old stuff and holy like the kind of prices that we used to get back then, they just don't exist now. Like
No. No. No, but and the issue is nowadays the kids of that era and us kids too, we want all that stuff. So the price is just always gonna be doubling and doubling, right?
yeah.
We'll never
And to be
find
honest,
those things for cheap anymore. Like I remember the first Super Nintendo I owned, it was around the same time I had got my Genesis. So
right.
I had traded another video game. I don't remember which one to the Capilano brothers. I know you know who they are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I
Those are
had traded
throwbacks.
them. I don't even remember what it was, but I traded them a video game for their Super Nintendo and about 10 games. I don't remember which games they
Oh
were,
damn.
but we ended up posting it in the Super Shopper. That's how old it is now, the Super Shopper magazine.
Super
So
Shopper.
we posted our Super Nintendo and like the
Remember
10
what that
games.
was? Super Shopper? What the hell's that? Is that in the newspaper?
No, it was a magazine. It was like a magazine that would have a list of ads that you wanted to sell, like
Holy
stuff with. So
just
yeah, you
local? Just local stuff or
yeah. It was all like a super shopper,
oh
yeah.
damn.
So we actually sold it. So the Super Nintendo, I think it was two controllers. The only game I remember, I think we had Aladdin for it. There was Lion King, I believe
Oh
also Super Mario World, but I don't remember all the other ones. But we sold it for 15 bucks and me and my brother thought we were rich.
oh God, you mentioned
Like
Aladdin and Lion King. No, I don't remember about Lion King on Super Nintendo. I know that they destroyed Aladdin on Super Nintendo. I see me as a Genesis kid, like I loved Aladdin. I thought the game was awesome. And then when I later on I played it on Super Nintendo, like the hell is this garbage? Like he didn't have a sword or anything in the Super Nintendo one.
no, well that's the thing, right? With the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, the Genesis was more they were pushing more towards, you know, that teenager group of fan base where they were gonna give you that mature content. Nintendo's always stayed in that realm of kind of
Yeah,
we're gonna go towards the kid friendly stuff. So a lot of games that were on both consoles, they're obviously similar because they're the same game, but the graphics are different, the gameplay is different. So they're both very different in their own ways.
and I don't know if you can speak to Lion King on Super Nintendo, but I remember playing that on Genesis, and it was like psychological torture. Like you might be able to get past the first level, but after that, it's just playing with you. Like it's toying
Yeah,
with you, just trying to
yeah.
mentally you.
It's it's not a good game. No.
No, no, that's the thing. It's like it should be a good game if they just would have made it a little bit easier. But
Yeah.
holy shit, that game's hard. I remember
Well,
being
you
in a Facebook group in high school. The final boss, Scar in Lion King, ruined my childhood. That was the name of the entire Facebook group.
It's just like, all those most of those Super Nintendo and Genesis games, they're very hard games, like, you would be like, "Oh,
Yeah,
it's
they
just a
should
it's
be
just a
back then.
side scroller, it's not gonna be difficult," but then when you play it, it's like, "Holy fuck." Even like I
Yeah,
was just explaining to you with Demon Crest, right when you start to play it, you start to fight a boss right away.
right off the bat. You're playing a barely
Yeah.
even know the controls at that point.
No, you don't even know how to play the controls, it just starts the game off, and you're fighting a giant dragon, it's like, "What the fuck?"
Oh god. Yeah, their games were unforgiving back in the day, man. Like
Yeah.
there was no like, man. That reminds me actually. Games that I've always wanted to be one of my favorite games of all time, but like they're just so cruel back to me. Is the Super Star Wars series on Super Nintendo? Like
Oh,
I
you
see
didn't like
those
those?
games and like well, graphically they're beautiful. They're fun, but they're so freaking hard. Like if it wasn't for the fact of like playing emulator, being able to rewind and stuff like that, or
Yeah.
save states, like I would never play those games. I would break every controller in the house before I ever beat those games. Like
I like Super Star Wars.
I love
It
those
is
games,
it
but
is
they
hard
don't love
though.
me back.
No, none of those games like you back, yo.
No, no, they're
Especially this
oh,
it's more the side scrollers are very difficult. More of the RPG games, the
yeah,
JRPGs, they're a little easier, but they're not as action based, so like
yeah.
it differs, right?
Well, I think those side scrollers too are still influenced by the whole like insert another quarter era of gaming. You know what I mean? Like it's still
Yeah.
that mindset when it came to developing the games. Like can't
Yeah,
don't make them easy.
that's it, right?
Yeah.
Do you know your favorite Super Nintendo game?
It is a difficult one for me to be honest. Like there's the it would be between probably three games. There's the three games that I played the absolute most of on Super Nintendo, or the two games that I played the absolute most of, and the one game that I have always appreciated, admired the most. So the two that I played the most of, one boring pick for all you gamer fans out there, NHL '94.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah, you knew I was going to say, but come on, one of the greatest sports titles of all time.
I don't know, man. NHL 2000 was pretty good.
NHL 2000 was pretty good. I have a video, a home video, and it's hilarious. It just aged so poorly, and it's like the intro to a game in NHL 2000. I'm playing it, and like literally they're all like block heads, and there are fireworks going up, and it looks terrible by today's standards. And my dad filming like, my God, look at the graphics. That could almost be real. It's like how many people do you know have block heads like that and block
We have to
hands?
we have to post that video.
Yeah, I should find that. I should yeah, I should go searching for that. But yeah,
We'll
anyway,
post
so
that
yeah,
one.
NHL '94, um, Donkey Kong Country would be the other one that I played the most of.
Yeah.
And then the third game, the one that I feel like should be my number one, I just admire the hell out of the game, is Super Metroid. Like
Okay, yeah.
Super
Yeah.
Metroid, it's a beautiful game. Like the graphically, it's aged well. Like you
Oh
still
yeah.
have like you're going through the map, you still have the feeling of like claustrophobia and stuff when you're going through. It's yeah, it's just an incredible game. A lot of depth to it for I that's what I was saying. I think it's the first side scroller I'd ever played that had that much depth, like collecting weapons and different objectives and stuff. Like I don't
Yeah.
think I've
Yeah.
ever most of the side scrollers I'd played before it were all beat 'em ups, right?
Yeah,
So
no,
like,
that Super
I can
Metroid's
imagine playing
arguably
Metroid at
the
the
top
time. I was
title.
like, wow, this is like the future.
Yeah, that's arguably one of the top 5 titles on Super Nintendo for sure.
Yeah, it's gotta be. How about you? What would be your favorite?
My favorite game on Super Nintendo is pretty easy for me, it's, Turtles in Time.
Oh, great pick.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my toe.
Yeah, that's also a game too that we used to play. I used to play at Rick's house a lot. So it was Demon Crest that we really got into at first, and then we started playing Turtles in Time a lot.
Right.
I ended
See,
up
I
actually getting
oh
Turtles in Time. I was searching for it, but it was so expensive. And we're talking about, the 10 years ago when we were big into
yeah,
retro collecting. And it actually
everybody
came
wants
into
that.
my work when I used to work at Goodwill. It came in the
Oh,
Goodwill one day and I was on cash, but at Goodwill, I wasn't allowed to buy anything. So a lady came in early, and I was like, "Could you please buy this game for me?" I didn't even know who she was. I just knew she was a customer that came in all the time. So I went up to her. I said, "I'm really sorry to bug you. This game is only $2. Do you think you can buy this game for me? I'll give you back the money, and you can just or have my I had my Nissan at the time. I had an Altima, so I had the window cracked a little bit, and I'm like, if you can just toss it through the crack of the window." And she's like, "No, no problem." And she bought it for me, and that's how I got my Turtles in Time. So I'm super happy with it.
Underhanded game deals at Goodwill. Oh,
Oh yeah, you won't believe the stuff. I can only imagine the people that work in the state, like in the states, in Goodwill. We don't have Goodwill here anymore, but man, the stuff that comes into that place is fucking incredible, man.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was I mean, as much as like I know, like you didn't love the gig or anything, that was a pretty sweet perk that you were the
Yeah.
first eyes on all the old video games that would come in and stuff like that.
Yeah, David got lucky because I couldn't take anything, so every time I got something, I had to call
You
him in and
call
be like,
him.
"Yo, I got a bundle of shit here, come pick it up." Oh,
Oh man, but yeah, Turtles in Time. I mean, I for me like I always loved that game, and I got the NES for the first. I my the first time I've owned an NES. I got mine for the first time 2 years ago. My fiance
oh,
got it for me for my birthday, actually, or no, Christmas
oh,
I think it was. So I was
okay.
on the hunt for Turtles in Time for a long time, and man, there's a couple times where I almost dropped the $120 or whatever that the game stores are asking for it now because I was just so desperate to play it.
Yeah,
But
it's good, man.
growing up, I played its ugly stepbrother, Hyperstone Heist, on the
Yeah,
Sega Genesis.
but dude, that game's not bad either, though.
No, no, it's very similar. It's just, but plot wise and the order of the levels are a little bit more like nonsensical. Like I do remember, I'm pretty sure even Hyperstone Heist, like at the end, like the plot's barely even concluded and stuff. Like,
No, yeah. And there was another game too I used to play a lot, Super Smash TV. I don't know if you ever played that either.
yeah, it's basically like that Schwarzenegger movie, right? Where it's like a game show.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
like an act. Yeah,
action-packed killing. You can have a couple people play it, and it's just, you know, brutal killing, and there's some very cool bosses in it. That's a very good game. That's a gem that a lot of people don't know about either.
yeah, that's a good one. I forgot all about that game too. I don't think I picked that one up at any point, but I really do you have do you have any other ones like that? Any other like great like sleeper games or games people sleep on the for the Super Nintendo? There's quite a
Um,
few. You
there's a
know what one
lot.
I really always liked, and I don't even know if it's a sleeper because I think it's probably one of the bigger racing titles, but I always loved Top Gear too.
Top Gear. I used to like F-Zero.
Oh, of course, F Zero. Yeah, I have F Zero at home. Oh, F Zero is a
Yeah.
must. My God.
And like it's not a sleeper, but obviously Super Castlevania is good.
Oh, yeah,
The Mega Man
absolutely.
series are good. Earthworm Jim is good. NBA Jam,
Jam, yeah,
Gala, Gala,
yeah,
Secret of Mana is good.
yeah.
Earth, obviously you got Earthbound, you got Chrono Trigger, you got Street Fighter. There's just a Link to the Past.
You
There's
know what?
so many games because I
This
know the Super Nintendo had about, I think it released like 1,700 games, so there was a game for everybody, right? And I believe the Genesis only had around 700 or 800 games released. So
right.
there's a big
That
there's
sounds
a
all
big
right.
difference in title availability for the Super Nintendo. Like it didn't matter what you liked or whatever, there was always a game for somebody, and especially this, I love it. And I know you love it a lot is the Super Game Boy. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, oh, absolutely. I mean, I got that following year after I got my Super Nintendo because that is my absolute favorite way to play the Pokemon series. You get like the beautiful
Yes.
border on your TV and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, the Super Game was amazing. Yeah, I mean, growing up, you only had the one option. You had that Game Boy and that little tiny screen. There's no emulators and stuff like that.
No.
So that you could just blow that up on the big screen, see your Pokemon on the big screen. Oh,
That was basically those newer Switch games
yeah,
on yeah, right. Because like that's all we
yeah,
wanted as a kid was to be able to sit on the couch or lie on the bed and have your controller and play on the big screen and you're able to do it with the Super Game Boy, right?
Yeah, I don't even need a flashlight add-on or nothing.
No.
Well, I
The
guess it's
Super
an
Game
add-on itself, so
Yeah, Super Game Boy was great, man.
yeah, yes. Um, that rem- that brings me to your name it lifting off the all those games and stuff.
Yeah.
That brings me to an idea I had. I wish I would have thought about it back when we did the Xbox episode 2. But it's a little game for us to play during these episodes where we cover video game consoles or video game eras or whatever. It fits into lots of different categories, but it's a game that we used to play a variation of it a lot in high school. But this version of it is going to be called Buy, Sell, or Trade In. I'm going to give you
Okay.
3 games. You're going to tell me which one you would buy with your own hard-earned money, which one you would sell,
Yeah.
and which one you would trade in.
Okay.
Uh, or sorry, my bad. I screwed that up. Buy, rent, trade in. My bad.
Okay. Buy
So
rent.
you would buy with your own money. You would own it for life. Which
Yeah.
game would rent out for a week, and which game you would trade, get rid of.
Okay.
So here's the first 3 I'm going to give you. These aren't going to be easy either. Just to warn you ahead of time.
Okay. Okay. No problem.
First 3: Super Mario World,
Okay.
Super Metroid, and Link to the Past.
Oh shit. That
Yeah.
is strong. That is tough.
Is there any you could like eliminate right off the bat? Is there one that stands out, or one that stands out as one you would sell, or one that you would buy? That's a tough one, eh? They're not going
I'm
to get
going.
easier either.
I'm going to sell Super Mario
Super
World
Mario World.
because that's like the highest selling NES game, Super NES game, right? So I'll be able to get that back at some point.
It's true. You might trip
I'm
on
go-
another copy on your way to the washroom.
I'm going to fuck. Super Metroid's so good, man.
I know.
I'm going to actually buy A Link to the Past. I'm going to say because I would
That
rather have like the not it's not open world, but I like the RPG style more than the side scroller. And
right,
I'll
right.
and I'll be that kid that rents Super Metroid but wish I bought it.
Hey, I think that's a pretty good choice. I think I would be the same as you, but just flip Link to the Past and Super Metroid.
Yeah.
All right, I got two more for you. The next
Go ahead.
one,
Let me hear it.
I think I know the one you're gonna. I already know the one you're gonna buy now because you've mentioned it already. But Turtles in Time,
Yeah.
Street Fighter 2, or Donkey Kong Country.
Um this one's a little easier for me. Obviously, yeah, I'm gonna buy Turtles in Time. That's my favorite Super Nintendo game. I'm going to rent Donkey Kong and I'm going to sell Street Fighter 2.
Oh wow, you're selling Street Fighter. See, I thought Donkey Kong would be the one that got because I thought you were. When I wrote it, I was like, well, I know Chris is a big Street Fighter guy. I know he's a big Turtles in Time guy. So that's the one I thought. I thought those two would be the ones where I wasn't sure
No,
which one you would.
I love Street Fighter, but it's only so much you can play the, Street Fighter 2
Fair
on
enough.
Super Nintendo format.
Fair
I,
enough. I,
Donkey
although
Kong
that,
has a little more in.
they didn't get that idea. How many different friggin' versions are there
I know,
of
but it's
every
good.
Street Fighter?
It's good when you get the turbo controller.
Oh yeah, yeah. I never had a turbo controller.
I will say for anyone watching out here, what really got me in Street Fighter, obviously it was my brother, but the Street Fighter animated movie, Street Fighter
Oh
2, the animated movie. If you can get that anywhere, watch it. The opening scene is one of the best scenes you'll ever see in a movie with Ryu and Sagat fighting, and you got the
yeah.
lightning storm coming down. Oh, that movie's
Oh,
a
holy
that movie's
snap!
a classic.
When Ken's driving his convertible in Seattle, blasting them bones by Alice in
Yeah.
Chains. Oh God, so awesome! Or
That
was
movie,
it Chun Li that's nude in the shower?
yeah, you actually get to see her. You actually get to see her tits, and then she has a fight with Vega in the room.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good fight too. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, that's a great.
that's that that's the one of the that ending fight scene with Ryu and Ken versus Bison is what made Bison one of my top villains of all time. I just love that guy, man. He looks that's that movie is what got me into liking the villains more sometimes than the heroes because his outfit, it looks so cool. The cape matches it. He's badass. He's big. He has good one-liners. The best part's
Yeah.
when he takes his chain and he rips it off and he starts fucking them up, man. That I love Bison, man.
Oh, that little leg. He sweeps the leg too. His little legs.
Yeah, he does,
That
and he
attack.
doesn't. He does a cycle crusher. He's got, he's amazing, man. I love Bison. In the
I
one
mean,
episode, in the one episode, I'll give you guys a hint. It will come up sometime when we pick our top 10, villains of all time or whatever. He will be on my list.
oh, that's a good idea. We should do that episode soon. I've got a
Yeah,
pretty,
a
I got a
lot of
pretty
homework
strong
has
film
to be
list
done.
too. All right, well, let me give you one more for the buy, rent, or trade in.
Go
So,
ahead.
last one, Mario RPG,
Hmm.
um, Chrono Trigger,
Oh,
or Final Fantasy VI. It is right on Super Nintendo. Six, yes.
yeah. I think there's two Final Fantasies on there.
Six is the
Right.
one I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
Um. What's funny? I actually started a game in Chrono Trigger like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, is that right? Eh?
Yeah, like I
You
started
playing it on?
playing
Are you playing it on your Super Nintendo or emulator?
uh, on an emulator.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't own that game. That game is like fucking $400.
Oh, is that a really expensive one? Eh?
Yeah, but like I just started playing Jade Empire, and then I was like, oh, I'll play this as well, and like I play like maybe 30 minutes a week of video games.
Right.
I-
Right.
I'm
Not
so like busy, but
not too
um
much time now that you got kids. Not as much
yeah.
time for Chrono Trigger these days.
No, but I will buy Chrono Trigger because just knowing the end outcome of that game, that in the long run, it's going to be one of those games that gamers want to have. It
Yeah.
makes sense for me to buy that one. What was the other two?
Mario,
Final
Mario
Fantasy.
RPG and Final Fantasy VI.
I'm going to rent Final Fantasy and then I'll trade away Mario RPG. Mario
Oh yeah.
RPG is cool because it adds in newer kind of characters and stuff like that, but there's a lot better RPGs on the Super NES. I
Yeah.
feel.
I agree. Yeah. I think mine would be the same as yours actually. Maybe Final
Yeah.
Fantasy because I'm not a big Final Fantasy guy to be honest.
No, I like I don't mind Final Fantasy. It's just you have to really get into, going through a lot of dialogue and a lot of cutscenes. I like in the earlier Final Fantasies,
Right. Right.
especially on the PlayStation. There's a lot of cutscenes, and you're just like, can I just fucking
Those
play?
cutscenes were pretty impressive for their time though.
Oh yeah, they look good. Yeah,
I remember
even on
seeing those when I
even
didn't
on the
play those
Super
games.
Nintendo, it looked good.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually Super Nintendo's like capabilities in the like aesthetics, sound. It kind of brings me to another question I want to ask you. Like, how do you see the system like age in comparison to other older systems? Like, how does the Super Nintendo age in comparison to the the original Nintendo Entertainment System? How did it age compared to the 64? Like,
I think obviously we know the importance of the NES, but the Super Nintendo is so far above the NES. Like the Super Nintendo must be in a, like if you made a list, it has to be there in the top five of greatest systems of all time.
yeah, yeah.
Like
I mean,
the
without
games
it,
that,
would be right.
the, yeah, the games that were on that console, the smoothness of a lot of those games, a lot of the major hits, carry that game, they carry that console till now. That even you just got one, not so long ago, a couple years ago, and now you want all those games that are the massive hits, but they're hard to
Yeah,
come by, right? Like I think we can't discredit the Sega Genesis in this talk right now, right? Like, um, if I can jump back in a time machine and be back in that era, I'm not gonna go with the consensus that I know. The media, the Super Nintendo is better, but honestly, I would have chose as a kid a Sega Genesis.
Is that right, eh?
Yeah, well, Sega did the right thing. They had a lot of advertisement, and as a kid, I would have fell for it. They had, you
I
know, they used to advertise, what was it, blast processing. And as a kid, you don't know what that is, but that sounds cool,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
and then they used to have commercials when they would call Nintendo out, and they would go, "Sega does what Nintendo don't," and
yeah, yeah. Nintendo,
they would,
yeah.
yeah, they would make fun of Nintendo right to their faces. Sega went savage on them. And as a kid, I would have ate that up. Like I remember a commercial when they were doing the blast processing and they had Sonic running around and then they had
Right.
and they had oh and Nintendo has this and it was a little beat down little van with Mario Kart on the back and it was putting down the road. So like I would have chose the Sega. I felt back then too that Sega was the closest console we had to the arcades. With that blast processing, what's that basically meant was the Genesis had two CPUs, right? So it was able to fire up at a faster rate, and it used to be able to run games quicker. So that arcade feel everyone wanted, you could get it more at home with the Genesis,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
as a kid, I would eat that all up, right? I'd eat that up and I would have chose a Genesis over a Super Nintendo back then. But now, let's jump into that DeLorean and go to the future. Like we go to a retro game store like we just talked about. You have a Sega and a Nintendo. The Nintendo is going to be about $40 more, right?
yeah,
Yeah, and the games for the Super Nintendo are, you know, way more
yeah.
than a Sega Genesis
Okay,
game. And
yeah,
not saying like we're talking about, we'll say Earthbound, Chrono Trigger, you have Secret of Mana. These are all RPGs. You have Gala. You have all these RPGs for the Super Nintendo. And you just say you have the Fantasy Star series. That's one of Sega's biggest. That's only going to
that's
probably
fun.
cost you That's going to cost you about 60 to 80 bucks for that game. You go and try to buy Earthbound, you look, 500 plus.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
I think the consensus media or the consensus player that, says Super Nintendo is better than Genesis, they're right on this one. We like to tell it how it is and like how we feel, but honestly, the Super Nintendo is the superior console. The games have more depth, they run smoother, they look better, but the Genesis is a console that shouldn't be forgotten either.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Like if I was buying a system back then, and obviously already mentioned that I grew up with a Genesis, but I would have probably bought the Genesis again. Same idea. Like I mean, for me too. Like me, sports games like that's
Yeah.
they marketed sports games. Nintendo did not do that. Like
Yeah,
um,
and Sega also appealed, like we said earlier, to the older audience. If you were playing Mortal Kombat
yes, you
on
get
the
the
Super
gore on.
Nintendo, you didn't get blood. You
Yeah, you
didn't
get
get
none of
gore.
that. Yeah,
You
you get
had,
fatality.
yeah, you had the more blood guts arcade feel on the Genesis, right?
Yeah,
And then when you seen those commercials of this little hedgehog running around at a high speed, and then you see Mario's fat ass hopping around some blocks, you want the high speed thing. You're a young kid, right? So
yeah,
Genesis 100% would have won me over if I was, that age of my brother and I was standing in front of, the glass case. There was a Super Nintendo and a Genesis. I probably would have took the Genesis.
how do you feel the two compare? This is the category I can never decide on. I don't know which one I think sounds better. Like you have that like gritty metal sounding like audio coming from the Genesis. Super Nintendo is definitely a much cleaner
Yeah.
sound. Like they could pull off like that the soothing, easy listening background music like Sim City sound. Like they can pull off like the beautiful, relaxing sound. But then
Yeah.
Genesis could pull off like the dirtier, like
Yeah. Grudge kind of.
yeah,
But
exactly.
like we said, right? Genesis ate up to that group era that wanted the grudge. The grudge was a big thing back then. You'll attest for it. You're a big fan of that music era, that
Yeah,
music scene. They appeal to the audience that wanted that blood and guts, that audience that loved arcade gaming. It depends. I honestly, the Super Nintendo music comes out a little clearer, like you said. So I would
Yeah,
say the Super Nintendo games have the better, more in depth soundtrack. But if you're into that grudgy, darker, gorier arcade style gaming, the Genesis was for you. Like you
yeah,
look at, and also like when I look at it, like back then, I would have picked the Genesis. I love how sleek it looks. I love the black console. We didn't get the Super Famicom. We didn't get that gorgeous Super Nintendo console.
that's
We
true.
got
Yeah,
we got the square gray with the purple, on and reset switch. We didn't get that beautiful Super Famicom like Europe
yeah. I never
did.
understood that. I never understood that. I guess just for mass production, they went with a cheaper look, or
I'm not too sure what it is. It might be I know on a lot of like, the Japanese markets and stuff, they like smaller things. In North America we like bigger things. So
bigger things.
that could have been
Yeah,
something too. But
right.
in all honesty, like we do on this podcast, we answer, not based on the consensus, what they think. But yeah, I would have chose the Genesis back in the day if I was that young age and I was, in front of that glass case. But we can both sit here and say the Super Nintendo is the superior console.
Yeah, absolutely. To be
Yeah.
honest, like in hindsight now, like I would rather have a Super Nintendo than an N64. Like I
Yeah.
feel like it aged better than the system that came after it because like you look at the Super Nintendo now and you can look at it. No, you don't have all these 3D games and stuff, but the stuff still aesthetically looks nice and it looks good. It looks clear and the
Yep.
colors all vibrant. You play a lot of like the N64 games, it's just freaking blocks. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's
Yep.
just, and I understand it's the evolution of video games graphically, but just for which consoles like have aged better, I really think like Super Nintendo's aged as well as any system once it
Yeah.
becomes obsolete.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the crazy thing about Nintendo, like we look at it through the history, they're big hitters. Mario, Zelda, Metroid. They've carried on that console. They carried into the promised land. Like we're talking about NES to Super Nintendo to N64 to GameCube to
Yeah,
Wii to Switch, and those guys are still the primary flag carriers for that console. Like you look at Sony, Crash Bandicoot was one. He died
yeah,
out.
yeah.
Spyro was one. He died out. Ratchet and Clank. They thought that was gonna be the one. And they died out.
Yeah,
Um,
Sega with Sonic too, really.
yeah, like Sonic is still around. He's still
He ain't owned
Sega's
by
flag
Sega.
bearer. No,
Well,
but,
not Sega ain't the same anymore.
but like Nintendo outlasted them, so we can't. I don't think anyone can sit here and say Sega's the better console. Like Sega did come out with some interesting stuff. They had the Sega CD attachment. They had a lot of cool stuff. They had the Game Gear. It had color, but it was very hard to play because you'd have to
I,
have
I had a
twisted ups.
Game Gear.
Yeah,
I had a
it
Game
was.
Gear. I don't even know if I ever played that piece of shit.
Yeah, yeah. It was massive. You had to hold it all different angles to actually see the screen. It
I had
was.
I had Batman Returns, so it was a fairly dark game to begin with, like visually dark game. I had no idea whether the thing was even on half the time. Like
Yeah,
you could do anything.
but that's what Nintendo does. It doesn't. They never talk shit. They don't make any commercials. They stick to what they do best, and that's having their big guns create the games that keep bringing back the fans, right?
Yeah,
So like,
they
I don't
milked the
know.
hell out of it.
They do, right? But those characters will never die out.
No, it's true. It's true.
Do you know um do you know the worst NES Super NES game you've ever played?
Yeah, absolutely. I know the worst NES game I ever played.
You better
Or
not say Shaq Fu.
what was I gonna say?
You better not say Shaq Fu.
No, I love Shaq Fu,
Yeah.
but same wheelhouse. Can you guess? So somewhat related to Shaq Fu.
I want to say like Pit Fighter.
Better basketball player though.
Ah,
Bill Lambier's
I was
combat
gonna say
basketball.
Beerland.
Well, I'm joking about better than Shaq, but he is the
Oh
greatest
god,
player not in that NBA Hall of Fame.
how the hell did he get his own video game?
Oh my God, he was like the greatest villain in NBA history. I mean, if you wanted a bad guy to name your, I mean, who's more infamous for just being an evil basketball player than Bill
Yeah,
Lambier?
he's
Greatest player not in
he,
the Hall of Fame.
I feel bad for him. He was always the one that would get fucking beat up for all
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Detroit
but
fans.
he deserved it most of the time. Like
Yeah,
he pretty much deserved it. I mean, even as a Pistons fan, I can say Bill Lambier's a scumbag.
yeah. But I will say like that's funny, right? That he had that because if you go back, like when the Genesis when Sega first came out, like NES had Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and then Genesis had Buster
Plus,
Douglas boxes. So Genesis Genesis was always just savagely beating down Nintendo somehow, man.
yeah, yeah. Oh my God, that's hilarious. I went like who would have got who gets that game if Buster Douglas doesn't knock out Tyson? Like,
Well, that's what but I think the Genesis had Holyfield boxing afterwards, did they not, or something
oh
like that?
yeah, there's a
Yeah.
couple boxing games on Genesis that are pretty solid. Like, there's a Legends of Boxing one. It's a pretty solid game. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, none of them are Punch Out. None of them are Punch Out.
No, Punch Out's number one in that field.
Yeah,
There's
basically until like the Fight Night games came around, there was no point in playing anything other than Punch Out.
no, well, no, Ready to Rumble was pretty good.
Oh yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
was
pretty
good.
good. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was good.
it's a lot better than Celebrity Deathmatch.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I don't find Shaq. It's like Shaq Fu's bad, but like I know people say it's one of the worst, but I don't mind Shaq Fu.
I thought, like, as a kid, I didn't even care that the game sucked. Like, it was like, well, here's Shaq, and the characters seem kind of cool.
Yeah, anything with Shaq in the '90s is awesome.
Exactly, exactly. All of his movies, all of his rap, all of it. I'd take any of it.
Fuck.
Shaq. How did Shaq not get in Space Jam?
Yeah,
Like,
that's weird.
he would have been a rookie, right? Or he would have played a whole year. It's almost like they like
Well,
what
he came in what 92, 93?
yeah, and what that movie's 94, right? Or no, that movie's like
No.
96.
Yeah, that's like a '96 movie. Yeah,
What the fuck is Shaq not doing in that movie?
yeah, it could have been Michael's choice,
Probably. He's like
but I'm
Barkley and Shaq. No one will even remember I'm in it.
yeah. Well, they had Muggsy Bogues in there too, so I don't know what the hell.
Oh, Muggsy.
Why'd they have Sean Bradley? What the fuck?
I have no idea.
Someone needs to get dunked on, so
Yeah,
they put
Christian Leitner. I guess Christian Leitner wasn't available.
they black they they blackmailed that guy after he stomped on the guy's chest, man.
Oh, everybody's always stomping on chest in basketball. It's happening this year too.
Yeah, Draymond. Fuck.
Yeah. Everybody that's watching for the video games like, what the fuck are these guys even talking about right now?
Yeah, we just totally got off topic.
Like, yeah, that's what happens when we start talking about Bill Lambier combat basketball. Did you
I will
mention
say,
a bad one? What was your bad one? What's your bad game?
it's actually not a bad game, but I hate it. I'm not a fan of this game. I know people that are gonna hate on me for this. I'm not a fan of this type of game. I've never ever been a fan of this type of game. I will have to say the worst game I've ever played on the Super Nintendo is Star Fox.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I know. I don't like that. I don't like that type of game, man. I'm okay with
Like, you didn't
like
like it on 64 either.
no. I don't like being in a plane the whole time. I don't like it, man. Like I can do it for like maybe one or two levels, but like for the whole game, oh, I don't like it, man. That's the worst game I ever played, man. I know
I'm not
people.
gonna lie.
I know
The
people
original
say like,
Star Trek or Star
yeah,
Fox could give you a C here though. Like,
yeah. Like I'm not a fan of that, man. I know people say that. Remember the Lester the Unlikely? People say that game
yes,
sucks.
yeah.
But even though the controls are shit, it actually gets a little better throughout the game because he starts gaining confidence. He starts to walk a different way. He starts to get new weapons. Like
Right.
it's a cool transition. You just got to get past that. The controls are horrible, but like Star Fox, I fucking hate that game, man.
Oh man.
And it, like
Yeah,
I'm
people.
not even uh, yeah, I'm not even saying it's a bad game. I just don't like that style of game, man.
You did what is it? What is it? It required like some of those Super Nintendo titles. Did it require an add-on or some sort of effects
No,
chip or something?
I don't think so, but I know Sega had some of that because I know for like Vector Man, remember that 3D one when you're like the
Man,
green ball?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Vector
you
Man's
had
a good
to
game.
yeah, you'd have to have the gun or something, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah,
Was there some kind of hookup? I can't recall, but
can't
someone in the
remember. I
comments
don't think so because I
would
had
tell me.
that. I had
Yeah,
that growing
no.
up. I don't remember having any like add-on.
Okay, there was nothing? Okay. I thought there
Yeah,
was something. Fuck.
I couldn't remember. Yeah, I thought there was on Super Nintendo. To be honest, I thought you need something for Doom and Star Fox, but I can't remember.
No, I don't think so, but well, I believe Doom actually had that nice red cartridge for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had that nice red cartridge, and then Killer Instinct had that black cartridge.
That cartridge. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I I don't think I have Killer Instinct, but I have its. I have like its shitty stepbrother, Primal Rage.
Primal Rage. You
Oh, you
remember?
know what's a great? Oh, you know what's a great one? I need to bring up at some point. It's the most recent Super Nintendo game I played. Is Michael Jackson's Moonwalker.
Okay, yes, yes.
Awesome game. Like that's the beginning of it. Just the Smooth Criminal. How it starts like the Smooth Criminal music video. They put the coin into the jukebox and then the bass. I mean,
Was that
Michael
the same
Jackson
on
listening
Genesis?
children's a little creepy, but
Was
yeah,
that
yeah, it was on both
yeah,
and arcade. The arcade's great too.
yeah, yeah? That is a fun game too. That's when they started adding a lot of celebrities into video games back then. Like a lot of
Yeah,
movies again. Like they had Alien, they had Predator, they had Terminator.
yeah. Alien's a
You
good game too. Aliens.
like I think they even had Die Hard. Like they had a bunch of fucking crazy shit, man.
Ooh, True
Home
Lies
Alone.
is a pretty solid one. I grew up playing True Lies. True Lies had a
Yeah.
solid game.
Then
They
they
had a
had Home
snowmobile scene. I was a sucker for anything with a snowmobile scene.
and Home Alone was shit.
Home Alone. Home Alone's
RoboCop was all
really
right.
bad. Which
RoboCop
one?
was
What
all
was?
right. RoboCop, did you ever play
Yeah,
that? Yeah,
yeah.
that was okay
Isn't there
too.
there's a RoboCop Terminator crossover game too? I think
Yeah, there is. Yes, RoboCop
that's
versus
pretty
Terminator.
wild.
Yeah, yeah. That
That's
is
pretty
pretty
wild.
sweet.
That was the
That is
cool thing is back in the day where you would get the crossover in the game before in the film, like like Alien vs Predator. You got the game before you ever got like any movies and stuff like
yeah,
that. Like
because they weren't afraid. They weren't
no,
afraid back then to make give you the games they wanted. Nowadays, now gaming, they're all afraid to do that shit.
or afraid to even fucking lift a finger. Just give you
Yeah,
a dink game.
that's the era when Capcom was on top. Now Capcom only gives you fucking these bullshit games, or they keep remaking the same Street Fighter. Like
Yeah,
I love Street Fighter, but God, at least put a fucking story mode or something in that motherfucker, man. I know they keep it arcadey, but it's like, man, you got to change it up. Like
yeah, gives you a little
if
something.
Mortal Kombat was able to change up their game, you can change up your game a little bit. You know,
Exactly, exactly.
is
Oh,
there?
what was I gonna ask?
I think you were gonna say like something like, was there anything you missed from gaming back then till now?
Oh, yeah, I mean what we just said for sure. Like the game company is actually giving a shit. That's the main thing. um. Oh, I miss everything about it. I mean, I miss cartridges. I miss blowing on cartridges, even though I know you're not even supposed to really do that. But like
Mhm.
that's why like if I go back and play Super Nintendo, like I want to get the games and play them on my Super Nintendo because it's just
Yeah,
like just the controller, plugging it, the feeling of plugging the cartridge in and out. Like that's
it's
what I
funny.
miss most. The
It's funny.
physical aspect of having
Yep.
stuff.
It's funny with that too. Like again, we bring back the Genesis. The cartridges were smaller, they were
Yeah.
sleeker, and they came in a nice, you know,
The cases were very nice.
yeah,
Yeah,
a nice plastic case. Super Nintendo, you got a big ass cartridge with a cardboard box. That's why
yeah,
a lot of them didn't survive if you didn't take care of them. Um,
yeah. The Genesis ones were fucking solid. You could drop those down the stairs and be good.
yeah, a lot of things I miss in those era of gaming. Obviously, we can both sit here and say we wish we grew up in the '80s, so we would have got that generation of gaming, right? Um, the
Yeah.
w- the one thing I miss is the artwork. I miss the artwork on the game, on the game boxes or cartridges or whatever you want to say, because back then the internet was kind of, just it wasn't as prominent as it is. So when you went to the store, you were just basing off of what the game looked like, and you
Yeah.
would have some of the best artwork you've ever seen on the cover of these games, right? I miss that. I miss booklets. I miss going to Blockbuster. I miss going to,
Oh,
Video Flicks. Those the Video Flicks is a store that used to be around us that used to rent out video
yeah,
games
local
and
rental.
movies. And you could just go there and be like, "Oh, let me try this game out before I buy it." And you rent it for the 3 days. You take the extra late charge for keeping it for a week. And that I miss that era of gaming. I miss arcades. Now when we go to arcade, it sucks now that we're getting older because everything seems nostalgic. Oh, there's a place opening up that has an arcade. Oh, let's go there, man. It's gonna be crazy. They're gonna have all the old arcade games, and when you go in there, it's disappointing because they don't have any of them,
Yeah.
right? And you
We had that.
you we're all chasing that nostalgic feel that that feeling we had when we were a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nowadays the like kids grown up games now have accessibility to all of them on their console at all times, and it's
Yeah,
just yeah, you have access to them, but like you probably end up really having access to less quality games, and at the same time, you just don't value what you do have the same as we did when you would go weeks going into Blockbuster trying to see find this new game, and someone would always have it out rented,
yeah,
and finally you get there the one day and it would be friggin' there, or
yeah.
yeah, like it just meant so much more back then. So much less meant so much more.
Even back then, if you didn't have a Super Nintendo or a Sega Genesis or whatever have you, you could rent it at the store.
Yeah, yeah,
You could physically go there and rent a full console for the weekend. Like
yeah. Have a game
that's
night with
how
your buddies.
yeah. Like I know the newer generation go, oh well, why would I want to go out to the store when I can just flip through the channel and have it on the TV? Like you said, we understand that, but less was more for us back then. Like
Yeah, man.
we would love for it to be like that again,
Yeah.
right? Like the feeling of getting out of your house, getting in the back of your parents' car at the time, because obviously, we couldn't sit at the front, and you drive down there and you just going through, the 20 aisles of videos and VHSs. And then I would always go to the back where all the wrestling VHSs were, and then I'd make my way to the video games. And then you would, have to decide like you want a video game or do you want a wrestling movie or like, what have you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the internet's great and everything, but for all the good that comes with it, your blockbuster's gone, your bookstores are gone, so are your
Yeah.
record stores. Like all the good,
Yeah.
there's lots of bad that come with it.
It's good nowadays that a lot of the nostalgic stuff is coming back. But if you have a family, if you have rent nowadays, you can't afford that. If you're a kid that wants to get back your Super Nintendo with all those hits, good luck, buddy.
Yeah.
You're gonna be spending a good $1,000, $2,000, right? And for what? For you to have, a week of fun and then it just sits there and collects dust? Like
I just
it's tough,
you tell
right?
your kids better get out working, kids. Daddy's got to get a Super Nintendo.
That's it, right? Oh, well, it's cool that the emulators make it a lot easier, but like you said, it's not the same. You're not
I
you're
actually
not
have this. I picked this thing up. Here, I'll show it to you. I picked this thing up about maybe 5 or 6 months ago off
okay.
AliExpress. I got tired of trying to collect old games. And
Oh, there you go.
it's just
Yeah,
basically an emulation console for all different everything before 64. Basically, it has.
Yeah, but see that works a little better because at least you can plug it into the TV and there's a controller, right?
Yes, yeah,
It's at least you have a controller based on me playing off my phone.
yeah,
There's a different feeling, you know what I mean? But I
yeah. A
feel
little
it.
bit. I'm still gonna sit on the couch. It still feels like I'm playing video games, like I've always played.
Yeah. Now I have the comfortability of lying in my bed and playing my video game without any cords hanging around, but it's a
Or,
different feel. That's the
well, with
main
one
stuff.
cord hanging around, you know.
That that's the main stuff I miss though. I love seeing that artwork on those games, and every game had some kind of cool special artwork, right? So I miss that, man. I miss the arcades. I miss when we go to school and talk about it and borrow games. I miss all that, man.
Yeah, yeah. It's a era of gaming that is so valid because we just know it's never coming back.
No, never, ever, ever, ever,
It'll
ever.
never
And
be
who
the
knows?
same ever again. But that's okay because
But
we have our memories still.
yeah, and the thing is, evolution. We gotta appreciate it, right? The next, who knows what's next for video gaming? We know they want to get into the VR stuff. They might take it to the next level soon. Like we have no idea. You got to remember when we were that young too. We're talking 80s, 90s. We wanted that virtual reality. We were like, oh, we got the 3D, we got this, we got that. Let's take it to the next level now. So we've been waiting for virtual reality. It's kind of here, but it's not what we want. So we'll have to just wait till it gets there.
Yeah, I've always had a weird thing about it. I mean, I think you always remember my line. I used to drop it in when I was in high school, back in high school, when we were just basically talking about VR, and I'd be like, I used to say it to my high school girlfriend, be like, the day you walk in and I'm sitting on the couch with glasses on, doing this or running around, just leave me, just leave me.
They got to do it like in Black Mirror when you put that little thing on the side of your head and you just blank out.
Yeah, it's great because all those Black Mirror shows, like they're all freaky, but at the same time, like I'd kind of be cool with this stuff.
Yeah, I would be all right with that too.
Oh,
You know what's
funny.
crazy though? Look at this crazy stat. The amount of hits that Super Nintendo has, it only outsold the Genesis by like 2 million units. So that's pretty good
Is
for
that
Sega.
right?
Yeah,
Is that worldwide or just North America? You think?
I think that might be just North America, but I'm not sure. But that's not too bad. That's
Yeah,
actually
absolutely not.
that's not bad because like I thought like when you play both consoles, you can tell the big difference that the Super Nintendo is a lot smoother and like
Yeah,
the games, the graphics look a little cleaner. But like we said, both great consoles. For any of you kids that were at that era that finally pick one up at the time, you won automatically, right? Because you had one of the top tier consoles. So we ended up getting those consoles a little later in the 2000 era, early 2000s. So we missed out on the original launch and all that stuff. But we still love the same games you guys love. We still played the same games, and we just speaking about our memories of 'em.
absolutely. Just speaks to how good of a console it was that it still appealed to us in the 2000s.
Yeah, and it till now it's still not dead. Then the Super Nintendo still isn't going anywhere.
Yeah,
I still have my Super NES collection upstairs. It's never going anywhere. I'm always looking to add. If I ever go to a thrift store or something, it's not something I kind of dive into now, but it's something I always look for is Super
just
Nintendo games because they're all a gem in their own way. They all have something special, and it's just a wonderful console. So I would say the Super Nintendo for me probably falls top three for me consoles of all time. I'm not too sure where it will fall for you, but that's where it falls for me.
yeah, I would definitely have to say top three. Yeah, there's. I don't want to reveal exactly what the other ones I'm thinking in case we talk about them on further episodes. But yeah, it'd definitely be my top three. Three,
That's it.
number two, number three for sure.
Yeah, it's a fantastic system, man. It's really good, and then we'll never get that era again of when again we talked about Sega. Like they were straight out calling out Nintendo. They were making fun of them. We never like even with PlayStation and Xbox. That's the big head to head. None of those guys have ever said like did a
Not
commercial and be like, X.
directly.
No, not directly, but Sega went out there and was like, Nintendo sucks. Like it's like
Yeah, literally. It was like they cut wrestling promos on them
yeah.
essentially in their
Yeah, like it's just the era that we'll never have back. This era is a little bit too sensitive. You can't do that now without,
do
you know,
that.
someone getting hurt or the media blowing up and people boycotting your company and not wanting to buy your console. So it's just a different era, man, altogether. But you know,
Yeah.
like you said, the memories last forever, and you know, it was great to come out here and talk about some of our Super Nintendo memories.
Yeah, yeah, it's probably a good place for us to wrap up, eh?
Yeah, so thank everyone for coming out and watching, and whoever watches, leave a comment underneath of your first experience, you know, with the Super Nintendo or the Sega Genesis. Either or, you can never bring up one or the other without, you know, talking about, you know, the competition. So please leave a comment underneath.
Absolutely. We love hearing from you. Well,
Okay,
this
and
wraps up our podcast for this week, but we got a big week coming up. We
yes,
finally it's finally arrived next Sunday. Considering was May the 4th is what, Wednesday or something like that? I don't even know. May the 4th is
whatever.
coming up next week. So at the end of the week, we will have our first Star Wars special for May the 4th.
Yeah, and I know you're
You
excited
know
for
I'm
that.
looking forward. I'm so looking forward to that.
All right,
Also,
guys.
May 6th,
Oh,
free comic book day. So go out and support your local comic book shops.
perfect. For everyone out there, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
So yeah.